Hello everybody, my name is Victoria. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back if it's not your first time here, and it's probably been a while since you were here. I kind of disappeared for a few months. Pretty sure I had filmed a video to release in April and lost it, and subsequently just kind of vanished from YouTube for a little bit. So yeah, we got some catching up to do. So we'll see how this goes. I feel like my phone is at like a weird angle, but you know what, whatever. It's September. Fall's coming up quick. I've been doing grad school, started beginning of July, had a couple weeks of like workshops and lectures and just like general Zoom meetings and all kinds of fun for those 2 weeks in July, and now I'm in the full swing of things working on my semester work, which amounts to 4 packets this semester. And it's a lot of work. I've got to read at least 10 books per packet. So I've done a lot of reading in the last month and a half, 2 months, which is great. I mean, I really slacked on reading after I failed to keep up with this channel in April. I've got to write a lot of things, like 2 essays per packet, 40 to 50 pages of creative work, which is fun because it's really forcing me to like sit down and work on my writing. And I'm actually feeling really good about it, which is great. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. I have a list of books to briefly talk about because there's so many and I don't want this to be a super long video. I don't want it to be like 2 parts or something. So let's just get right into it. All right, first on the list, I'm pretty sure this is the video I lost. I finished Gods of Jade and Shadow by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I finished that on April 4th, 2021. So that is probably about when I filmed the video and then lost it. I do remember, and I feel like I should have jotted down my thoughts, you know, like a good book reviewer would. I do remember that I gave it 3 stars. It was kind of like meh, middle of the road for me. I think Silvia Moreno Garcia is a really talented writer. I liked a lot of the details that she had in this story, but it was very telly. Like it was told a lot more than it showed, which I believe I had read somewhere after the fact that that was intentional on the author's part. She was intending it to be read that way because it's like a fairy tale retelling, and that's how she envisioned it. So, you know, that she accomplished what she wanted. Middle of the road for me, you know, not the best book I've read this year, but, you know, not terrible. I don't know. I also finished Rebel by Marie Lu. Also gave 3 stars, middle of the road, and I've probably mentioned before that Marie Lu is one of my favorite authors, and I don't know, I realized in returning to the world of, you know, of the Legend trilogy, I read it all for June. I didn't particularly care for Day. It had been a while since I had read Legend and Prodigy and Champion. Yeah, I guess I kind of forgot that of the, you know, 2 point of view characters, June was my favorite. She's not a point of view character in here, like, at all. So that was kind of disappointing for me. I do like that it was the aftermath and showing us how Eden and Day are trying to, you know, have control over their lives and start fresh. But yeah, I prefer June. So it was the middle of the road, you know. always loved Marie Lu, so it's not like I was disappointed. Well, I mean, I was disappointed with it only because I wanted June. She's in it. She is in it. So if you, like me, preferred June, she is in it. I can promise you that. Books that I have started and have not finished. Oh boy. Ruin of Kings. I started this April 28th. I'm not even halfway through. It is dragging for me. I don't know, just haven't returned to it. And then I think I finished the first chapter so far of The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. Same thing. I started it May 13th apparently. Haven't picked it up since. That's great. That's great. Moving on. So this next set of books that I finished, and I'm going to talk about each of them kind of briefly, not going to kind of full in-depth reviews. I mean, if you want to hear in-depth reviews of them, comment down below and I can do that, because these are all books I've read for grad school. So I was definitely paying more attention. You know, I was being more critical, thinking more critically of these books. I was looking at them as a writer, not just as a reader. So I probably would have more to say about them than I did Gods of Jade and Shadow, which I cannot remember anything about at this point. All of these books too, except for one, I borrowed from the library, so I do not have those physical books with me anymore, so they will be kind of floating around here somewhere. So first, I read The Coldest Girl in Coldtown by Holly Black. I gave this book 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's a standalone story about a girl named Tana, and she lives in a world plagued by vampires, but the vampires have kind of been like sequestered away into these places called cold towns after there was an outbreak of vampires. And basically, if you're bitten by a vampire, you go cold, and you can let it be flushed from your system if you're able to kind of lock yourself away for a certain length of time. Otherwise, you're pretty much told go to Coldtown and turn into a vampire and just live out eternity there. I guess that's kind of their plan. So Tana's ex-boyfriend gets bitten at a party where all of their friends and classmates are killed by vampires, setting off the story, and now they've got to get to Coldtown, and they are accompanied by a mysterious vampire named Gabrielle, who is wonderfully quirky. So it makes for an interesting journey. I liked it, gave it 4 stars, read it in a couple days. I read it from July 19th to July 21st, so, you know, I was into it. My boyfriend pointed this out to me too, that he knows that I enjoy a book if he only sees me bring it to his place once. If I bring it with me multiple times, he knows I'm not enjoying it because I would have finished it, you know, after that first time I brought it along with me, which I found really funny. And yep, he's 100% right. So he only saw that book like once. Next, I started immediately after Coldest Girl in Coldtown, was The Girl King by Mimi Yu. 3 stars, middle of the road. I keep looking down because I have my notebook here and I like wrote it down so I wouldn't have to be like looking at my screen. And you know, now I'm just like looking down, dropping my notebook. It's about basically this girl thought she was gonna be the ruler of the empire, and she's not. Father decides to name her cousin and is gonna marry her to said cousin. And the cousin instead, when she rebels against him and is like, no, I'm just gonna make your life difficult, she ends up, you know, surviving an assassination attempt by him on a hunting trip and sets off to collect an army, basically. And yeah, middle of the road. It was not my favorite book. I enjoyed the writing. I enjoyed some of the kind of like atmospheric details and the magic system of the world. But yeah, I don't know. Some of the plot points, if I remember correctly, seemed kind of convoluted to me. So yeah, middle of the road. All of these books, by the way, are YA, except for one, because my degree is specifically in writing for children and young adults. So all these books that I'm talking about now are all YA or middle grade, which I believe was only the one is middle grade. So next I read Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo, continuing the Shadow and Bone trilogy. Another 3 stars. I believe I had said before in a video that I had read Shadow and Bone and didn't particularly like it, didn't particularly see all the hype around it that, you know, some people gave it. Siege and Storm is another one of those books where once one thing kind of unbelievable happens in terms of like a plot contrivance or something that conveniently happens, it kind of sets the stage for it to happen throughout the rest of the book. And there were a lot of things where it was like, if the characters just thought, it could have been avoided. Just thought. I don't know. I think in terms of a sequel, I did like it more than Shadow and Bone, I think. I don't remember what I reviewed Shadow and Bone as, so I don't know. I could be just like totally lying to you right now. Who knows? Yeah. Next was Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. I hope I pronounced that right. Children of Blood and Bone, I loved. I gave it 5 stars. I loved it so much. I had my boyfriend read it too because I talked about it so much, and he was like, all right, I gotta read this, and he enjoyed it too. I really loved how whole this world felt. I liked the magic system, how it kind of had there were these set rules, but they could kind of be bent a little bit, it felt like. I really liked the journey, although at times the main character, Zaylee, I would forget how old she was because she tended to be like a petulant child at times. So I'd often forget that she was, a teenager. I think she was 17. Too old, in my opinion, to, well, I mean, yeah, She was kind of childlike, kind of pouty. Also didn't like the forced kind of love thing between her and the prince. Probably gonna mispronounce this. Inan? I think it's Inan. That's how I kind of read it in my head. I don't know, it just kind of felt very forced. So, yeah. But I still really liked the story. I thought it had really good pacing. All that fun stuff. Oh my god. I'm trying to remember these things as I'm going, and I feel like I should have sat down and thought these through beforehand, but too late now. So moving on, I read The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. This was a suggestion from my advisor, who I believe it was for plot, because that's what I'm trying to work on this semester is plot. It is a novel in verse that follows main character Xiomara and her struggles with her overbearing mother and her trying to live the life of a normal teenager, you know, spending time with a boy. And she writes a lot of her thoughts down in this journal. And yeah, I gave it 4 stars. I'm not much of a poetry fan, so novels in verse have never been something that I've thought about reading. I don't have much to say about The Poet X. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was, you know, a very strong plot. I thought Xiomara was a very strong character. Again, not much of a poetry person, so anything deeper that was kind of hidden within all the different poems was most definitely lost on me, because this is one book where I wasn't able to dig too deep into it simply because it was poetry, and it always feels like I hit a wall when I'm reading poetry, and people are always like, oh, there's like this and that and in this poem, and I'm like, what? So yeah, that's that. Then I read the graphic novel Nimona by Noelle Stevenson, because I'm interested in writing a graphic novel at some point in the future, and I really liked Nimona. I gave it 4 stars again. You know, it's not my favorite book. Generally, I reserve 5 stars for my favorite books, like top tier, would read again. Nimona, I probably would read again just to kind of study the structure of a graphic novel and, yeah, all that fun stuff, you know, structuring a plot of a graphic novel, writing the script of a graphic novel. And I don't know, I just always like reading about villains too, so that was fun. I enjoyed that. Next was the middle grade novel that I mentioned. It's another novel in verse. It's Starfish by Lisa Phipps, published this year, I believe. So I hadn't, again, a novel in verse, so I would have had no clue it existed. But my school, we do these reading like a writer workshops throughout the semester, and Starfish was the first one to go along with the first packet this semester, so it was a required reading. And novel in verse, I read it in a couple hours. I actually used the Libby app through my library to read it because I couldn't get my hands on a physical copy, and it actually made it really easy for me. I'm not one who likes to read ebooks. I prefer to have the physical book in my hand. I have a much better experience reading it because if I'm on a screen, I feel like it's way too easy for me to get distracted, to just close out the app, go do something else, or I see a message come down and I feel like I have to, you know, address it. But it actually made it really easy because I wrote one of my critical essays about starfish and like motifs about water, and it made it so much easier for me to find every single word relating to water to help me write this essay. So that was actually pretty fun reading that in ebook format. It is a heavier story in terms of subject matter because the main character, Ellie, is an overweight middle schooler who is bullied relentlessly by her peers, and also by her siblings. Her older siblings bully her, and her mother is just gung-ho about getting her daughter to lose weight in the worst ways possible. So that may potentially be triggering for some people. I know that in our discussions, people mentioned that this was a very heavy story for them to read. They struggled with the subject matter, so just beware of that. And then after that, I read Children of Virtue and Vengeance by Tomi Adeyemi, the sequel to Children of Blood and Bone, and boy oh boy was I disappointed. Children of Virtue and Vengeance, if I could speak, that would be nice. I gave it 2 stars. And it got 2 stars simply because I think Tomi Adeyemi is a talented writer, and not because I thought the book was good. In terms of sequels, this is probably one of the worst sequels I've read. Especially following a book where I gave 5 stars to it. I was so disappointed. I mean, like, all I had, I talked to my boyfriend about books a lot because he's also a big reader, obviously, and he'd read the first one, and I was just complaining. That's all I could do about this book was complain. Characters were not consistent. It takes place like a month after the first book, and they've done like 180s on their own personalities. And I don't want to get into it because I don't know if you haven't read either of the 2 books yet. I don't want to spoil anything, and I can't speak about much because there's a big thing that happens at the first book, and I can't speak about anything in the second book if you haven't read the first book and you want to read the first book. So we're gonna stop talking about Children of Virtue and Vengeance right now. I may do a full video talking about that, talking about Children of Virtue and Vengeance specifically because of the gripes that I had with it. So I don't know, comment down below if you'd like to see that, if you've read both books and maybe you disagree with me. Let me know. I'd love to discuss it because I was very disappointed with that book. And then I finished Shadow and Bone trilogy with Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo. 3 stars, middle of the road. Thought it was a pretty solid ending to the trilogy. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought that it would just kind of be like a downhill slope into book 3, that I wouldn't really enjoy it all that much. I don't know. There are some elements of it that I'm like, it's a plot contrivance if I've ever seen one. So, yeah. Again, because it's the 3rd book in a trilogy, I don't want to talk too in depth about the plot because it will reveal things in earlier books and obviously reveal things from said 3rd book. So, if you're interested in seeing a full review of the Shadow and Bone trilogy, as a whole from me, I don't know, comment down below. Maybe I'll do it. And then finally, the book that I finished with for my first packet was Warriors Into the Wild by Erin Hunter, one of my favorite books from when I was young. I didn't know that this was classified as young adult. I was reading this when I was in like 4th or 5th grade. I was reading these books, so I think I was a little young for them. They're quite violent if you've never read them. It's about talking cats. I saw someone reviewed this on Goodreads and prefaced it by saying, I don't like books where there are talking animals, and I also don't like cats. And it's like, gee, wouldn't have guessed that you didn't like this book. 3 stars, middle of the road. Now that I am older, I definitely am just kind of like, it's, it's a book. It's not bad. It's a lot. I mean, it's a short book though. I mean, I finished it. I started and finished it the same day. It's nothing too deep, nothing too complex. Exactly as I remembered it. It's, yeah, maybe I'll do a full read through of the whole series, which I don't know if I would want to attempt that because there's so many books, and I'm pretty sure they're still publishing books in this series. So yeah, with Warriors, that's it in terms of what I read for my first packet. I'm working on my second packet right now. I'm a little behind on my reading. I finished a craft book, The War of Art, Winning the Inner Creative Battle by Steven Pressfield. I liked it. I gave it 3 stars. I liked it in the sense that it kind of was a little bit validating for some of the feelings I have surrounding writing, because that's one of my big struggles, is that I feel like I have all these ideas for stories, but I can never get myself to sit down and write them, because whenever I do, I feel like it's not good enough, or shouldn't write it, you know? So it was kind of a little bit of a kick in the ass, like, you know, just do it. So yeah, not the best craft book I've read. I prefer Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird way more, but, you know, it was, you know, it was kind of a little bit of a push I needed, so, yeah. In terms of current reads for school, I have been working on Shiver by Maggie Stiefvater. I have some thoughts about this book. I used to see this cover in my, I want to say middle school. When was this published? 2009, so I would have been 10. Yeah, so it was definitely middle school library is where I would see this, and obviously I'd see it on bookshelves at like Barnes & Noble, and I was always kind of like, huh, interesting. Shiver, wonder what that's about. Never got around to reading it. Was at the library a couple weeks ago trying to get some books for this next packet, and I was like, you know what, I'm finally gonna read this because I know there's 3 books in this series, and I knew vaguely it was about werewolves, and I am working on a YA fantasy right now involving werewolves, so I'm kind of trying to read a little bit more werewolves to get into that mindset. Yeah, the first couple chapters of this read like a fever dream to me. I was just like, I don't know what just happened. I don't know if it actually happened. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, oh yeah, that most definitely happened. And it was weird. This book is weird to me. I started reading it September 3rd. This one's probably going to take me a while to finish. I mean, I at most can get myself to sit down and read a chapter at a time. I can only take so much of it. It only takes so much. And then today, I am doing like a book club with some friends of mine, and our first book that we're reading for September is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides? I don't know. Silent Patient. Started it today, read the first chapter, so I don't really have much to say about it right now. You know, get back to you on that one because I'll have to finish this one soon. Yeah, I think it's the end of September we're going to talk about them. So yeah, that's what I'm reading right now. And now I just wanted to give a little promotion. A friend of mine and his friend wrote a horror novel. A horror.
It was horror.
A couple of local guys, one of whom is my friend, wrote a horror novel, and I helped them edit it. I edited the first draft for them. Anyways, you know, beta read it for them, if you will. Nolan is a big fan of Stephen King, so that gives you some indication of what type of story this will be. I obviously read it in first draft form. So in terms of if I obviously plan to read it. I have my own copy. I bought it. You can buy it over on Amazon. You can buy it in ebook format, or you can get a paperback. It's like $15, I think. I don't think I would review this on my channel simply because I was involved with editing it. So yeah, I don't think I'll do a review of it. Instead, I will shamelessly promote it for Nolan. So go check it out if you're interested. He also is on YouTube. He does paranormal investigations with a group of his friends. They're called Pitch Black Paranormal. Check them out and go tell him he's trash and tell Victoria sent you. So yeah, that's what I've been up to since April. Yeah, you know, done quite a bit of reading at least, so I'm happy about that. I'm also debating trying to do other kinds of videos on this channel to see if that kind of like gets me to keep up on it, because right now I think the easiest thing for me is going to be doing approximately 1 video a month, maybe 2 if I can squeeze it in. Realistically, it's probably going to be once a month, middle of the month, so I'm hoping to have this one up by the 15th. If I had thought of it at the time when the Shadow and Bone Netflix series first came out, I did watch it. I actually enjoyed it more than the book, funnily enough. I thought after the fact, I was like, oh, I should have done like reactions to that. But, you know, there's another season coming. I'm sure there's plenty of TV shows I could react to instead. You got any video suggestions, or like I said, any books that I have mentioned today that you would like to see a full review of, drop a comment down below. Give me some of that engagement, because my channel has been dead for like 4 months. So yeah, if you've made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much for being here, for tuning. Thank you so much for tuning back in. I'm glad that you're here. It feels good to be back, even though it feels kind of weird to be filming again. I gotta get used to being in front of the camera again, but excited to be here. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.